We're excited to get to the Rude Guest Hotline and talk to Amy Dash. Joining the show is Audacy legal insider Amy Dash. Insider calls are presented by BetMGM. Go check out all the latest lines today on the BetMGM app. Amy, how are you? Thank you for making time for us.
Doing great. Thank you for having me.
So it's really funny, right? We're very excited to have you on. You are the Audacy legal insider, and you're talking to us presented by BetMGM. and yet we want to talk to you about this crazy college basketball scandal.
Yeah. Scandals.
One of many we've heard about recently.
I totally. So for you with the I get bogged down in legalese. The allegations, I guess, is the technically where we're at. What did you read in those documents that appear to be very significant to me?
So there's more than 39 players on more than 17 different NCAA Division I men's basketball teams who are being accused of participating in and receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribe money. And so in terms of the charges, the main charges are conspiracy to commit wire fraud and bribery in sports contests. And obviously the bribery in sports contest charge is self-explanatory. The allegation there is that they were taking money in exchange for participating in the fixing of these games, and specifically, agreeing to ensure that their team would fail to cover the spread of the first half of a game or sometimes an entire game. And then the fixers, who were the people that were allegedly organizing this, would then place wagers on those games, recruit other people to wage on those games, and bet against the team whose players had been bribed to underperform and engage in this point-shaving scheme.
So, I mean, this is significant, but this is kind of what we hear, right? Is that you get.
We kind of knew it would be something that might be coming.
Right. I don't think it's a surprise. What I am really curious about, and I think one of the unfortunate byproducts of this stuff is you hear about this, and then you look back at games, and you're like, oh my gosh, were they point shaving in that game?
Right.
Of the colleges listed, I found the language really interesting. There were, at least in the report I saw, they named 20 colleges affected, right?
Yeah.
Now, what does affected mean?
So it got a little bit controversial because they listed colleges, and then I think some of the media people got confused and thought that those colleges had players that participated in this scheme. But in fact, a bunch of the colleges, like St. John's and some of the other ones that were listed, they were affected, and the meaning of that is that they were sort of the victims of playing against teams where those teams had players or one player or multiple players that were underperforming. So I would say affected would mean, either the victims or sometimes a team that had a player on it that was underperforming. But I just actually tweeted at Amy-TV the defendants and the charges against those defendants. So you can see the teams on that chart, which was released by the DOJ, where there were players that were accused of participating. So just because you see a team that was affected, it doesn't mean that team was implicated. It doesn't mean that team had a player on it that was engaged in this so-called conspiracy.
That's been my pet peeve for years in this media thing. That headline told a different story than what the story was supposed to be saying. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When you say
absolutely,
affected,
right.
now you people are probably, descended upon some of these colleges asking questions, and they're like, we were the team that the other team did it against. I think the headlines got to get a little closer to what the damn story is.
Right, exactly.
So
and that's unfair.
The biggest names, the biggest schools on here appear to be DePaul, right? I see a couple kids from DePaul listed. I see a Tulane kid listed. Now,
Tulane had this problem back when I was in high school or something with Hot Rod Williams.
New Orleans is a wild place, man. So, Amy, I have a hyper-specific example, but what's even worse is Georgetown's not listed. The Georgetown-DePaul game last week, the Hoyas shot 4% in the second half, and apparently DePaul's the one shaving points. What the hell?
I don't know that last week's game was part of it, because I think, this investigation has been going on for 2 years. So a lot of the games that are mentioned, are a little bit further in the past. But it's been coming down the pipeline, and we saw that that whole conspiracy with NBA players and coaches that happened just recently. And what's really interesting about it is that these two guys that are allegedly the fixers, so sort of the ones that coordinated all of this, and they're not basketball players, they're just gamblers, and they're people who, at least one of them is admittedly somebody who cheats to earn a living and gambles to earn a living. And some of them have lengthy criminal histories. And those two fixers who were allegedly the masterminds of this, separation between those two cases. And in fact, one of these people, his name is Shane Hennon, who's alleged to be involved here.
Sugar Shane.
Does have a history of cooperating with the authorities, reportedly, according to the Department of Justice. And Sports Illustrated wrote a whole article about it, where in prior cases he allegedly cooperated in handing over information about other cases to get himself a better deal. So a lot of that could be going on and might continue to go on. And that's sort of why we see this cascading from case to case, where there's even more revelations coming out weeks or months later about conspiracy and bribery in other sporting events and in other leagues. So theoretically, this could spread across other sports too, if in fact this has been going on covertly, and there are similar people, or even there's somebody who has knowledge of something else going on and they want to get themselves a better deal. That's when cooperation comes in. And it's very hard to beat these federal cases. I mean, almost 90% of people plead guilty in these federal cases because they're so hard to beat, and so cooperation becomes the mechanism for a plea deal.
Well, when the fans come at you, they already know anyway. So when they ask the question, they know the answer. But the question, like you said, mafia people involved, and you got kids in college getting, I guess,
in the NBA one,
and the NBA and all this stuff too. So you start worried about threats.
Exactly.
Do you gonna do this or else, and those type of things? How do you think they can get control of this in a sense?
Well, do you mean like the defenses that are possible here?
I know that they got security teams in all sports. They got FBI filing stuff, CIA filing stuff. How do they get this thing to where you got a kid walking on campus, somebody walk up to him and say, if you don't do this, this going to happen. Kid probably going to do what the hell they say do.
Exactly. I think that's one element of it, but I also think that people that were specifically targeted sometimes were underdogs, or people that maybe aren't eligible for NIL because they're not talented enough or popular enough, or maybe they don't have aspirations to go to the NBA because you're risking a lot, right? So you would think that the more talented players wouldn't try to make short-term money for long-term risk, but people who maybe are just playing college ball and they realize that they're just getting an opportunity at an education and they want to graduate with a degree or go on to graduate school, well, the sport is short-term for them. And if they're in need of the money and they grew up and they didn't have that socioeconomic wealth, then they're more prone to being targeted and agreeing to something like this and not really thinking of the long-term consequences. So I don't think threats are going on all the time, but I think there is calculated targeting of people that are more likely to agree to these things. And then I think once they get involved and in the mix, that's where your point comes in. Then at that point, it might be harder to leave the scheme because then the threats might come in because now you're in bed with these people,
Wow. Oh, yeah.
Dude, I mean, this is real gangster stuff here. We're talking with Audacy legal insider Amy Dash with this ongoing college hoop scandal, which, as you correctly point out, could be a byproduct of the NBA scandal. One thing I know, Amy, everybody should give Amy a follow at Amy Dash TV. Of the thing you just tweeted out with the actual people's names, this dude Shane Hennon, aka Sugar Shane. His residence is listed as Vegas and Philly, and Amy said it's believed that he helps the authorities when this comes up. That dude better head for the hills. like if we know that, then other people know that.
Like the thing about Philly. When I was in Philly, Cuba Libre, we used to go to this restaurant. We were told to not go to that restaurant again. Because if the security guys on the Philadelphia Eagles knew back then, 2001, 2002, that that's where all the gamblers hung out. Believe me, it's 2026 now. The authorities know where the people hanging at and what they're trying to get done.